Why, hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Voice of the Rings. I'm your host and guide, Zollin, Ironshield, and this is a guide video today, one of our more moderate level guide videos. We're going to be talking about how do all classes function? How do they work? How do they kind of like, what do they do in game? All right, so this is more of a basic to mid-level or a refresher course for those of you who might need it. We're going to basically just talk through it right now today. Later on, I'm going to be making some more guide videos on some more in-depth subjects on every different things with classes and also like how they feel, how they play, things like that. But there'll be a little bit of tie-in between some of these videos, but mainly I'm going to, how do they function? What do they do in game, right? So if you're a brand new player and you're just like, I really want to pick my class, but I don't even know where to start, this video is going to help you. All right, that's the goal of this video today. So first things first is with classes, most classes can't be played all by the same race. All right. So for example, if you are a dwarf, you cannot be a regular dwarf. You cannot be a lore master, mariner, burglar, or Beorning if they're blocked out. Right now, little side note: Beornings can only be Beornings. So really, Beornings don't have a class. They're just themselves because they're humans with weapons that turn into bears. So yes, it's there to be a class, but let's talk about the class of Beorning, even though I tend to argue that it's not even a class but mechanical wise it is, because it still has a trait tree. All right, so real quick for newer players, a trait tree, which I have explained in other guide videos, but let's stick to this page for now so I can go through this quickly and not bore you. The trait tree basically, usually most classes have 3 different things, or some classes with some recent updates have 2 main things they do with a assist tree that kind of helps one of the other 2 trees. So Beornings, they are really the class that can kind of do it all. So really, well, let's do a category thing. There are healers in the game, there are damage dealers, there are tanks, and there are supports, which kind of consist of either buffing their team or debuffing the enemy or doing CC, which is crowd control, by the way. So I'll try to always do terminologies. I'm going to have a video, by the way, it might already be on the channel, with terminologies of just MMOs in general and LOTRO in specific, since that is what you guys are here for. So Beornings they can do 2 separate things pretty darn well. Actually, they can really do all 3. Beornings can tank pretty good. They're not like the main tanks in the game, but I've seen some pretty impressive tanks. They can get a lot of HP. So it's very easy if you have the right gear in game. So here's another caveat that I have to put in this video. If you are a really high level player later, so this is for newer players who are learning from this video, or you're just getting a refresher course and you played a long time but you just need a refresher, a lot of high level tier stuff most classes can do if they have that in their tree. So Beornings technically can tank, DPS, and heal. They can heal quite well. That's like they're like a support class more with healing, but they can still heal pretty darn well. Most things they can be the main healer. Sometimes they're the off healer. The off healer means that there's a dedicated main healer and they help heal another group or a side group or something like that. But they're very good healers. You have to be quite close to them for their big AoE heal though. That's one downside. AoE is area of effect. They drop a puddle on the ground basically, and if you're in it, you get healed. It's like a magical plant thing that appears. So then damage, they are very good at doing damage. They have their bear form and their human form, and it's really fun. And they just like go crazy with their bear form, slashing everything, and they can hit everything in front of them. They're very good at clearing ads or enemy playing NPC characters, non-player characters that are in instances or dungeons that you do that basically attack you in big groups. That's what ads are. There's usually a boss, and then there's ads. Okay, so so they can do DPS, and they can tank quite well. They can tank very, very well. They are very, very big, strong. They get lots of HP and that kind of stuff. They maybe don't tank quite as well as some of the more dedicated tanking classes, but they're up there. They're really good at tanking. So those are kind of your options when you play the Beorning. All right, that's kind of how they function. All right, so now we're going to go through the other classes. All right, we're not going to really worry about the race too much right now, what can be what. I actually have a list over here that I can bring up after that gives you a detail on what everything can be. So this is class, so Beorning can only be a Beorning, but Brawlers can be Dwarves, Elves, High Elf, Hobbit, Man, River Hobbit, Stout Axe. Just keep that in mind. Those are the races. That's going to confuse you, so we're going to stay away from that right now for this video. We're going to talk about the Burglar class. What does the Burglar class do? So the Burglar class it's LOTRO dedicates this class as an advanced class and a support class, all right? And just jump back before I forget. Beornings are also considered an advanced class, and they are a damage/support is what their role thing says, but they can also tank, and their support is more of a healing thing. But they've got some good buffies there and help people out. The Burglar, again, is just considered main support role and advanced, but I would like to update that for you. Burglars can do some very nice damage in their damage tree. They're also very good at debuffing the enemy. They're very good at opening what's called fellowship maneuvers, which is a special stun that allows your whole team to do some cool maneuvers. It's really, really awesome. They're also very good at debuffing the enemy. So the reason they call them support is mainly because they're very good at debuffing the enemy boss or units, and also making it where they take more damage from your team. And you can open fellowship maneuvers to help your team get heals or buffs or whatever from the fellowship maneuver. So they're very supporty in that way. But I would definitely say Burglar's main role, besides being a support, is damage. They're very good damage dealers, especially when it comes to single target damage, and some overtime bleeds and stuff. Bleeds are basically things that tick and do damage over time. Terminology. But yeah, damage, and they're debuffers. They're support class. They kind of hurt the enemy boss so that your allies can do more damage or be protected from them, or blind a bunch of ads that run at you. Now they have 25% chance to miss your team, that kind of thing. So Burglars, fun class. Of course, we can go into more details on their function, as in you could technically pickpocket enemy NPCs around the world and stuff like that. No, you cannot pickpocket real players. I know some of you are going to ask that in the comments. No, you can't. But they're fun class. They are a fun class. Brawlers. Brawlers are an advanced class according to LOTRO as well. I agree with that indefinitely. I think they're far harder than Burglars are. And, well, yeah, I don't know if I totally commit to what I just said there, but they're more advanced, the Brawlers, and their role is defense and offense, or damage and defense. So instead of using those terms, let's just say tank and damage. They're very good at tanking, especially single targets. They have an area effect, AoE taunt, which basically forces units to attack you. But they also have a single taunt to make sure the boss stays on them, and they're very tanky and strong. And if they plant themselves in one spot, they want to do that. Kind of almost like a boxer. They're based on Helm Hammerhand, right? But they're kind of they put themselves into a spot, and then they get buffs if they stay in that spot when they're tanking or fighting. When they're in damage mode and support, they have a lot of great abilities while they're fighting to kind of help their team. They're not considered supports, but there's actually a bunch of things they put off to help their team around them to an extent with certain different stacking things and stuff. So overall, very fun class, but they're kind of a damage dealer or a tank. More of a single target tank from what I've noticed with tanking them, but they could also be a good off tank, meaning they could tank some ads or another little boss while maybe another main tank tanks the main unit, right? But they're very good. They're very good, and they could be main tanks if you're end game. Again, if you're top tier gear, you have the best gear in the game. A lot of these things where I said, well, they're more of an off tank, they could be a main tank. if you have the best gear in the game as a brawler, you'll be fine. But I'm talking more for newer players' perspectives here, for choosing. So captains. Captains are a really fun class. It says they're a moderate difficulty. I would agree with that. They're just a little bit hard. They're not too difficult. And it says that LOTRO considers them a support role. I would yes, absolutely. But captains are very versatile. They're versatile. It's crazy. So they can be extremely good tanks. Even originally in the past, they weren't ever really meant to be that many years ago. But they're really good tanks from some of their abilities. So their tank tree is wonderful. They have a good damage tree. They can do some decent damage. They're maybe not the best damage dealers in the entire game, because they're not supposed to be, but they do a lot still, especially if you're talking of your end game gear. You're going to be able to do good damage. They're very strong. I was playing one the other day, not even good gear. I'm like, wow, these captains do a lot of damage. And then they have a heal and support tree. So their heal and support tree is more if they're just being there to help make sure they can debuff the enemies, they can heal their allies, and they can buff their allies, right, with different buffs. Buffs are usually bonuses, and debuffs are negatives. So an enemy boss might take 30% more damage from a debuff, where your team, if they get buffed, might get 10% more health for your whole fellowship for 30 minutes, right? Maximum HP or morale. We call it morale in LOTRO. So they're very strong. They can DPS, they can tank, they can support, and they can heal quite well. Now, I wouldn't consider them being like a main healer, but if you're doing like a small 3-man instance, they can easily be the main healer. If you're doing some really big high-tier raid, maybe, but usually they'd be an off healer. They just help keep people up, or they'd heal 1 or 2 individual people or a small group while the main healer focuses on the tank that's getting beat on by a monster, right? That's kind of the idea. All right, so there we go. That's how they kind of function. The champions, how do they kind of function? Well, champions think of tornadoes, whirlwinds of steel, and sharks. Shark tornadoes. Okay, I'm sorry. That was dumb. So they are considered a basic class. I absolutely agree. They're not very hard to understand. They are damage dealers. Now, champions can tank. They do have a trait tree that allows them to tank with a shield and a single-handed weapon. That is a possibility. I rarely see people do it. It's very rare. So if you're someone who's really out there and you're like, I want to be a tank champion, like, I mean, you could do it. You can do it. Some people will even tank with a champion in tank mode with a two-hander or one hand, dual wielding, I mean. But usually if you want to seriously tank, you'd probably want a shield. They can use heavy shields. There's light, medium, heavy stuff in the game. They can use heavy shields, like the main tanks, which are kind of like guardians. But really what you're going for with a champion is you're going to be either a Blade Storm of Death, which is one of their trees, okay, and it's usually dual wielding, or you could use a two-handed weapon and use their red tree, but you could also do that with a two-hander. I mean, dual wielding. But they can do some crazy damage too, which is more a single target, like one-on-one enemy, more like a burglar for their red tree. But it's crazy. They can do so much damage, melee damage. But really, their big thing when people think of champions, like what is one of your main things that people want out of a champion, usually with a group, they want you to be a whirlwind to be able to kill a bunch of ads. That's a big one. But yes, they can tank and do single target damage too. But really, just a tank and damage dealer. That's how the champion functions overall. Guardians. Guardians are the pinnacle tank in the game. Only closely followed by like the captain, really, and the Brawler and Beorning, again, pretty decent tanks as well. The Warden is also a good tank. We'll talk about that in a minute. But the Guardians can do two things. They're kind of like champions. They can either do damage or they can tank. But they are far better at tanking. That is their thing. They're really, really, really good tanks. All right, and that should be the case. And I'm over here saying that I think they should buff the Guardians' tank ability. I think Guardians should have a passive like Beornings and Captains where they get some more HP when they're in tank mode. That's just my opinion. But they are really, really strong in other areas. So the Guardian can be very good at it. They're protecting their allies. They have lots of area of effect taunts. They have lots of they do have a way to open fellowship maneuvers while they're tanking, just like burglars can at will. They're the only two classes that I think really have the ability to at will open a fellowship maneuver without a chance. Everybody gets a chance to open one of these abilities. But they are super tanks. They just if you want to be in the face of enemies, you're not going to be doing no flashy explosion damage, but boy, are you going to be hard to kill. Well, 35 things are slamming on your shield with their swords and axes. You're like, haha, you can't kill me. So they're very, very strong in tanks. Now, can they DPS? Yes, they can absolutely DPS. They have some cool little buffs where they can buff their allies a little bit or get responses from them from both of their trees, their tank and their damage, and they have a yellow tree that's kind of a support tree for their other two trees. So pretty much their damage and tank. That's what Guardians do. Mainly tank is kind of their main thing, but I really like DPSing on a Guardian, and they usually use a two-handed weapon to DPS, and they can block with a two-handed weapon, which most classes cannot block unless they have a shield up. So that's kind of cool. Guardians can block with their shield, and they can also block with a two-handed weapon while they're in DPS mode, or they can off-tank with a two-handed weapon, possibly, with a smaller group of ads or something. So it's possible to work like that, but usually you want your shield out. But they do pretty good damage once you get the right gear at higher levels. Hunters. Do you like arrows? Do you like to shoot things with arrows? Do you like things to explode with damage? This is your class. Hunters have a couple different trees. They are coming up on a rework, so I will cover that later when that comes out. When the time of this video, it is not out yet, but they are going to get a rework soon. But they will still be damage dealers. I'm assuming they're just going to get buffed. They're going to get more damage. They need that, but they're still very strong right now. But as an overall classes, they could use some buffs. Just like even though they reworked the Guardian, they could use a few little things too. I feel in the damage area, it'd be nice if they could do a little more with certain things. They do pretty good damage, Guardians. I shouldn't complain. Hunters are... just troll it over here. Hunters are really high damage. They have a few different trees. One of them is called, I think, the Precision Tree. One of them is just high damage and you have to hold still while you're shooting. Another one, you can actually run around while you shoot. And the third one is a CC type tree. This may change with the update. But basically, they do have some stuff where they can do some crowd control. And with their traps and with a couple of their like rooting effects. But overall, they're a damage dealer. That's like their thing. Single target AoE, they do pretty good on both with both of those. Really, I think their best thing is single target damage, but their one tree does allow them to do some pretty good area of effect damage with rain of arrows, storm, and stuff. They're a damage dealer. We don't need to talk about them more. If you like arrows and shooting stuff, that's your class. And no, they do not get a pet. The hunters. I know some people think that because of World of Warcraft, but they do not. Lore Masters. These guys do get pets, all right? Or girls, whatever. These guys do indeed get pets, the Lore Masters. They are a very, very fun class. Do you like magic? Do you like fire and lightning and animals? This is your class. This class basically is a caster class. They're a magical class. They can cast lightning bolts. They can cast all sorts of stuff. But how do they function? Well, they have a couple different functions. They have one that's a support with their pet tree. This makes their pet very, very powerful and buffs them, and they're able to do a lot of like buffs on their pet and their allies and like debuffs. That's one thing. Another one is they have a damage tree with the rework. They just blow things up. They don't get a pet in this tree, but they are like lightning, hurricane of ice, literally fireballs, things die. Great area of effect damage. It's pretty good single target damage, but it's really good area of effect damage too. You can really clear out a place real quick. So they're very good damage dealers, and then support. And again, they are considered an advanced class with LOTRO. I would bump Lore Masters down. There's a lot of buttons to learn, but they don't really seem that advanced. So they're somewhere between moderate and advanced for me personally for telling a new player. So again, damage dealers and support is what they consider them as. Yes, damage dealer, support is like their animal and buffing people. They also can debuff the enemies. They have amazing crowd control. Okay, they're one of the best classes for that in their yellow tree. So they have a tree that's based on like support and crowd control. It's fantastic. They can debuff the enemies. They can buff their allies. They also do have in the animal tree and the support tree, they also have some heals. They can be a good off healer. I don't really think they can main heal like a raid. I've never seen a Lore Master try to do that. Maybe a single target they can keep alive, with their certain heals. But yeah, they're kind of like a support off heal. Really, I don't think you could really main heal with them. But really, it comes down to their damage dealer. The pets was supporting their team. A little bit of heals, a little bit of buffs. They can buff their team. And they can debuff the enemy, and they have great CC, crowd control as a support. So again, damage support, yes. But you split that down to the support being, it can be crowd control, it can be debuffs on the enemy, it can be buffs on your team, and it can be heals on your team. So they're pretty versatile with all that. I like the Lore Master. Mariner. The Mariner is a more advanced class. I would say yes, it is a more advanced class because it sits, by the way, I didn't even tell you, the Guardian's considered a basic class. And I agree, but when you get to higher levels, there are some, no matter what, with every class, there's some things you have to learn to really become proficient with the class. So there are some things that, like, when you get to the end game, you don't feel like, oh, I'm never going to learn anything again. There will be some stuff. Same thing with the Champion's considered a basic class. Hunter's considered a basic class. Yes, these are all the more basic. They're very straightforward classes, basically, is what they're saying. Mariners, more advanced. Yes, they have a balance thing that they have to balance using their 2 types, like blue and red abilities. Or if they go too far one way or the other, they'll get like knock themselves out for a second. They are a damage dealer. They do have some support stuff, some heals and support things for their team. So they consider them a damage dealer and support. That is what they are. I agree with them entirely. That's what they do. They're very fun. It's very swashbuckler. Swashbuckler. I was going to try to say bucklery, but that doesn't make any sense. So swashbuckler. So they usually dual wield, kind of like champions, but champions are more like a whirlwind of death, where these guys are more like precise. Think Pirates of the Caribbean, you know, little precise stabs and stuff. Where champions are like, and things explode. Like what sound effects? Yeah. All right. But they're very fun. I think Mariners are a very fun class. Minstrels. This is the main healer of the game. All right. They're moderate difficulty, I agree. It's not too hard, not too easy. When you get to higher end stuff, healing can be more challenging no matter what, but it's not because of the class, it's because of the knowledge of the game in general. It says the role is healer. Healer and damage. Alright, so this is a little bit outdated. They are amazing single target damage dealers. Alright, really fun in player versus multiplayer. I didn't even talk about player versus multiplayer with most classes. They all are fun to an extent in certain ways. So are burglars, so are... We're not going to go into that one. But we're talking about mainly just playing in general. They are healers and damage dealers. So you can either be a single target damage dealer, or you can be a healer for your fellowship. You're good at healing the whole fellowship. You're good at healing a single target. You're good at buffing your fellowship to a certain extent, but mostly you are just the healer. All right? Very good healing class. So they're like the main healers. We love healers in Voice of the Rings Kinship, if you ever joined us on Glamdring. We have like 3 people now that heal, and it's like, yes! But, you know, that's comparing to, like, our 90 players that play every other thing kind of thing. So Rune-keepers, we can always use more healers. Rune-keepers, very, very fun class. I really like the Rune-keepers a lot. They are moderate difficulty, I agree. I would say easy to moderate. They're not as challenging as they seem once you learn their abilities. Damage dealer, healer. That's what they are. That's it. You've got a 1 tree that functions as more of a single target where you can run around. It's your lightning tree. You can shoot lightning bolts and be like, unlimited power! Okay, yeah, you know, like the Star Wars. The Emperor. You can shoot big lightning bolts. Very fun. And then you can run around while you do that. The next one is the fire tree, which is very good at killing, doing raids. Killing raid bosses. Does lots of damage to them. It's super, super damage, but you usually have to be standing still while doing what's called inductions. By the way, this is a word that basically means as you channel an ability, it's like, oh, you know, like Dragon Ball Z, Kamehameha, you know, you get what I'm saying. You can't move while you're doing it. Same thing, that's the same thing, by the way. Hunters in one of their trees have that, and lore masters also have that with a lot of inductions. Okay, just a little side note there. Minstrels do too when they're healing. But Rune-keepers, they have to do that with their fire tree. They also have a healing tree. Amazing healers. They're also like main healers in the game. I would say, who are the main 2 healers in the game with classes? It's Minstrel and Rune-keeper. They are the main healers. They can heal raids by themselves. They're very strong at it. Beornings and captains also can heal very well. But I don't think they have the same level of healing potential as a Minstrel or a Rune-keeper does. Just because there's some limitations with the Captain Beorning. One for the Beorning is distance. You have to be like right next to them for a lot of their heals. You can't leave their side very far away because it's like around them. But again, they can heal very good too. But Rune-keepers are great healers, great damage dealers. One's a mobile lightning build, the other one's in stationary. Lots of damage, more damage though, but fire. Very fun class. This is okay. I don't want to have favorites here. Okay. All the classes are really fun. I play them all. They're all really fun to play. They all have a very unique feel to them. And I'll talk about that in another guide video on like how they feel to play. Okay. Today is how they function. I like the Rune-keeper. It's a fun class. Wardens. Last class to talk about here. Wardens are a, very fun class. They are advanced. I would actually put them at extremely advanced. In fact, I would put them at the hardest class in the game because of their gambits. What are gambits? It's a type of thing where they only have a few abilities, but you have to put them in the right order, and then you get ability that triggers depending on those abilities. And later in the game, you get up to 5 slots. So you can be like, spear, shield, spear. It gives you a special ability. Then you can be like, shield, spear, shield, spear, shield, spear, shield. It'll give you a different ability, right? And then once it triggers, it clears the thing, and you can do another one. It's a lot of memorization. You can look at them and bring them up on the side in the game, like in your skills. But it's a lot of challenge there. They are too good at 2 different things. They can tank and they can damage. They cannot wear heavy armor like most of the other tanks can. Actually, I believe Beornings wear medium armor too, like the Wardens. But the Brawler, Captain, Champion, Guardian all can tank with heavy gear, heavy armor. I think Beornings are medium armor. But Beornings get a lot of HP. That's the thing. They get a lot of HP. From what I remember. But Wardens use medium armor, but they have a lot of ability to dodge and parry things. So do Guardians, to an extent. But Wardens have a really good ability. They can throw out heals for their group. They can throw out heals for themselves with their different abilities. They're very survivable. They're very good at taking on lots of ads, like the little guys. They can pull a lot because they have a lot of big AoE abilities. So they can DPS up close with their shield and spear. They can tank with their shield and spear with lots of AoE taunts and stuff they have, and healing themselves and things they can put on themselves to dodge and block and evade and stuff. And they also have a damage tree that allows them to basically, well, I don't know if it's a tree, it's more of you switch an ability, but they can also use their javelins, which they normally have in their backpack, to range fight. And they're very good at doing damage from range too. So they can be a good damage from up close and from range, and they can tank. They don't usually main tank, but they can in some certain situations. But we're talking about really, really, really endgame stuff. Most of the times they would be a DPS or they would be an off tank. But again, if you're just playing with your friends and you're brand new to the game, you can easily be the tank for most of the game, doing basic stuff out in the field in the land of Middle-earth. So anyway, that's basically how all the classes function. So they're like tank and damage, tank and DPS. So we covered it pretty thoroughly there. And again, I will link this class thing you can kind of use this to look at what classes can be what. So if you want to be a Rune-keeper, you could play a Rune-keeper as a dwarf, an elf, a high elf, a hobbit. Hobbits can't be it, but man, river hobbit, and stout axe. So you can kind of see right here, right? Unfortunately, dwarves cannot be lore masters, and neither can stout axes, which is the other race of dwarf. That makes me sad. I think the dwarves should be able to be lore masters. I think actually more so than other classes. So a little side note here. I think dwarves should be able to be lore masters more than a hobbit should be able to be. That's just my feeling on that. But anyway, that's just someone's gonna be like, what? What are you talking about? So anyway, there we go. That's about it. We've kind of covered it pretty thoroughly here. I actually forgot that dwarves can be wardens. I thought it was only stat axes that could be wardens. So pretty much just so we run real quick on the side here, there's humans, right? Male and female. And then we have high elf, same thing, which are basically a different race that's been added later. Some of these you have to purchase with expansions, and purchase if you don't have them, they're locked. But most of them you get with certain expansions. The dwarf, they do not have a male and female because it's a joke on the original lore that you can't tell the difference. And then stout axes actually do have a male and a female, but they don't change either. It's kind of funny. It's just the joke that you can't tell the difference. So stout axes are kind of like an added. They're not Durin's folk. They're another group that was from like one of the other dwarven clans from the south. I think the Zelruka, right? I believe. I think more made up for LOTRO, but it's so awesome. The high elves are supposed to be elves that came over from the Second Age or from Valinor. Regular elves are elves like, Elraandor and stuff who've lived in Middle-earth their whole lives. We have hobbits of the Shire. We have river hobbits. River hobbits are kind of like where Gollum was from. All right. So that's kind of the idea behind them. Again, they explain a lot of this stuff too. And then Beornings are, well, Beornings from like The Hobbit, Bjorn. All right, anyway, that's about it. And then you can kind of see what classes you can play based on that. If they have a little ring crossed out you can't play, that means you have to purchase it or something. You might not have the expansion or something like that. Or you need to buy it or something. But most of them you can just have. Now, I don't remember off the top of my head, but I can link that with the LOTRO wiki if you need it. Have a great day in Middle-earth. Thanks to my wonderful Patreons for their support. I'll see you all in the next episodes of Voice of the Rings. And Red, thank you for being Royal Guard. And also Elraandor, who's a Royal Guardian, who I just need to shift up there. Thank you for increasing. I appreciate that support, you guys. I do this full-time now with the channel. Stay happy. Have a great day in Middle-earth. I hope this helps you with newer players or people who need refreshers. And I will have even more advanced guides in the future, probably directly talking about certain things. I have a couple already on the channel. You should check out. I have 4 different guide playlists. One's advanced, moderate, and basic. And I also have one called 101 for Dummies. That's a play off the book series. I don't consider one dummies, but you get the joke. All right. Anyway, see you guys. Stay happy, my friends. See you soon. Like and subscribe if you would. Leave a comment. If you got questions, I'll answer.